we must protect and fight to protect our freedom to speak our mind, however challenging it is with certain people to hear them. Where is the line? That line is always a difficult conversation to have, about abortion and the line of freedom of speech, incitement to violence. Well, what is violence? Are words violence? I'm reminded of Ricky Gervais, who said offense isn't given, it's only taken. If you choose to take offense, then take it. I'm not giving it.
Right. And it's not tragic if you're offended. The idea that we're
Right.
supposed to remake civilization to avoid you being offended, that's a dire prescription right there.
Yeah, and I think what I've been doing with the Respondent and why I started the Respondent is to try and just begin a conversation, a multimedia conversation. And part of it came about through this. We talk about the founding fathers, the Constitution, and America, and where we are today. Part of it came out of this toxic masculinity, smash the patriarchy, all men bad. And there were so many men being cancelled. Some of them were, justifiably tried in the court of public opinion and then tried in the legal system. But some, I think, were caught up, particularly in my business, in the entertainment industry, without due process. And, trying to return a place where chivalry, I feel like chivalry is dead or it's been lost. I'm reminded of, I forget who wrote the quote, but it goes, but the mind of man is not like Fourier's heated body, continually settling down into an ultimate quiet uniformity, the character of which we can already predict. It is rather like a tree shooting out branches which adapt themselves to the new aspects of the sky towards which they climb, and roots which contort themselves among the strange strata of the earth into which they delve. And when I think of that, and I think of congeniality and how to be a more gentle man, and the origins of chivalry, which I think they go back to, it was a code of conduct, I think, developed in the 13th century. And the ideas of chivalry and how to be more chivalric, how can we even begin to have that conversation if we are cancelling the very idea of man is extinct? Smash the patriarchy, as I understand it. The matriarch and the patriarch is the mother figure and the father figure. And what are we going to do? We're going to suggest smashing the matriarch and toxic feminism? No, that's just the shame rage and the point-counterpoint. And, most of us, I think, most of us men, I would like to think, are not looking to smash ourselves and tell ourselves that we are all toxic.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I very much liked that recitation. I've never heard it before, but it's brilliant. The issue of what is happening to masculinity is so dire. And, you say that some people were tried in the court of public opinion and then tried in an actual court, and others were just tried in the court of public opinion. But even more distressing than that is the fact that some people were tried in the court of public opinion for things that aren't even wrong.
Yeah. And it's guilty till proven more guilty. Not even guilty till proven innocent, or innocent till proven guilty. And that is what really concerns me, particularly in the area of family law is one place. The Respondent deals with the familial bond, the familial tapestry of how we collectively as a community and interpersonally within our marriages, relationships, father-son, mother-daughter, etc., how do we tend to that communication skill, interpersonal communication? I think most of us are vaguely familiar with stories of family breakdown or familial breakdown. We have a friend or or a family member who endured a bad breakup. It's a common trope in our dramatic and comedic entertainment, and obviously reliable fodder for places, media outlets like TMZ and supermarket tabloids. When it comes to celebrity relationship implosions in particular, I think that there's this notion, this thought that men, and particularly celebrity men, and I don't classify myself in that bucket, are superhuman, and they're not. We're not. We're just human beings, and every individual is struggling with something. And as we are trying to remain physically healthy within the organism, we have to remind ourselves to exercise from the neck up. I think mental health is a huge issue right now. It was particularly with men. Because we don't talk about it. Particularly with COVID and this messaging of social distancing, which I've mentioned to you before, is so inherently flawed. It should be physical distancing and social connectedness. We are human beings. We're sentient creatures. We should be encouraged to come together as small groups and larger groups and be communal. And there's a lot of currently I've seen a lot of commentary on this topic of men being bad. And we're bombarded by messages about the deeply corrosive effects of toxic masculinity, and confronted with institutions psychologically conditioned now to think masculinity is toxic, that men are bad. Man's kindness is extinct. Chivalry is a bygone notion. And particularly in the family law system, it's rife with outdated gender ideas, every bit as sexist as those faced by women in other arenas, past and present. And we need to spirit level the sexes somewhat.
So I very much like this topic. I have a lot of thoughts on it myself, and I believe that the sexes are up for a renegotiation, but that renegotiation would be insane to implement some kind of sameness, to enforce it in any way. In other words, I believe strongly that there are features of masculinity that are honorable and that we must preserve. There are parallel features in the feminine world that we need to honor and preserve. We should leave people the freedom to avail themselves of these things, irrespective of what sex they are born in, but we should not expect men to be like women or vice versa. We should find out what people want when they're truly liberated. In my case, my wife is lovely, but she does have a kind of male bent. She plays like a boy. And,
the animus has risen within Heather.
Yes. And, it's a great thing. I'm very pleased to have a partner to go adventuring with, and somebody who doesn't shy away from danger or pain or all of these things. So it's not like I want to go back to the 50s, right? And sometimes that's how it's portrayed. At the same time, I think we are doing a tragic disservice, especially to our boys, in telling them that masculinity is a hazard or is inherently bad or something like this, because among other things, I may have said this to you already, I can't remember, but the fact is straight women do not like weak men. And so if you induce your boys to become weak, you're setting them up for a tragic romantic failure. And it's not kind.
I agree with you. And you have said that to me before, and I couldn't agree more, that how the mother and father, if we're talking in simple terms, or the matriarch and the patriarch, negotiate these differences of opinion of parenting, I think is so that the child gets the most opportunities to take risks, but not risks that will kill or severely injure him. In the case of boys, because I'm a man and I have boys, it's not sexist. I'm not, not talking about girls and women for that reason. I think that's vital. I remember the first time my son squared off to fight physically, and I reassured my wife at the time that it was a necessary rite of passage. And as our youngest, I think he was 6 maybe at the time, and my eldest was 8, so there's a 2-year age gap. They needed that experience, that prideful moment. He needed, the younger brother, because I'd been the younger brother, of taking his elder brother on and maybe even teaching him a lesson in the process, which he did a couple of times. And she was still somewhat distressed as I led the boys into the back garden or backyard and created this imaginary boxing ring. Although she trusted, well, trust is important, it's vital. She trusted me enough to calm her understandable mother bear concerns, to believe that I might know maybe better how to handle this rush of testosterone situation. And this sort of balanced parenting cannot take place if men and fathers aren't present. There must be a balanced or renegotiation, as I say, the spirit level of the sexes, in order for boys to become more fully formed, self-actualized young men, take those rites of passage with a deeper, more imagined sense of healthy boundaries, so that they can eventually, alone, take those steps to start to think like men, responsibility equals reward, and feel like boys, risk-taking equals ambition. And I think the more we can advocate fatherhood, advocating fatherhood is not about admonishing or diminishing motherhood. I believe the primary role of a father, or one of the primary roles, is to maintain an aura, a presence, if you will, which says, look and listen, son, life has problems. We're going to solve that problem together. One day, you'll leave home and be playing more seriously on your own with your own little children, boys of your own maybe, or friends, sons and daughters to play with, tend to be responsible for. Let's prepare for that day to learn how to confidently and sensibly risk take together. And I think it's vital for boys to learn through the eyes and the experience and the behavior reflected from a father, and to learn boundary setting, self-discipline, and how to instill a sense of empathy for themselves, their partners, peers and friends, and eventually, their ultimate partner, hopefully. And when the testosterone in boys is not channeled well, boys become destructive. And when fathers are not present in the family home to instruct, boys destruct. And when testosterone is channeled well, boys become constructive. So why aren't we advocating? Why aren't we talking about positive masculinity and positive father figures, fathers, role models more, so that we can leave a legacy for the younger generations that we leave behind?
So I want to connect a couple threads if I can manage to do it. Your theme about the constructive aspect of masculinity is very important and near and dear to my heart. And I have the sense that we are very complex creatures. I mean, that's a fact. And that what that means is that the way things are hooked together is often not obvious. And so there's this tendency, this Chesterton's fence problem, where something, the purpose of which is not totally obvious, gets removed because a strong argument can be made that it's somehow antiquated. And that very frequently we are living the harm that arises from having eliminated something vital without realizing we were doing it. And what I see on this topic is that we have renegotiated the rules of sex, and that those rules of sex, basically we are told that any resistance to just getting laid and not thinking about the consequences is somehow oppressive, and that the discovery that sex is just a biological drive and that you should follow it where it leads you, and there's no reason to make it more than it is, and all of that. There's no reason even really to give a damn about the person that you're having sex with, that the consequences of this are many. And one of them is that it puts males in one of two modes, and it's not the one that we should want to flourish, right? Men have always had the opportunity to spread their seed without taking responsibility for the consequences, and that is not men at their best, that's men at their worst. And the problem, the reason that we are now hearing about toxic masculinity, is that in a world where men have been told that that part of them is just fine and they should, activate it, is a world that is dangerous to women because the men are viewing them as targets rather than as partners. And in that world, there's this temptation to then write the rules that make women safe to be around men, rather than writing rules in which men are prone to behave more honorably because, frankly, it's the only path to a life worth living. And I guess the final thing I would say on this is that in a world where sex had not been demystified and where it was therefore difficult to come by and required real investment by men in order to persuade women to go to bed with them, men moved mountains in order to impress the women that they were most interested in. And that was a process that was tremendously powerful. And the fact that these things are now frequently satisfiable with a kind of junk level of sex is resulting, I think, in a great deal of potential just being absolutely squandered because there's no motivation to follow it.